We're joined today by MacStadium's CEO, Greg McGraw. Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Bill.
Can you I have your core deck or your investor deck in front of us, and I'll kind of to work through it, but really I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. But first of all, who is MacStadium? Tell me about the firm.
It's an interesting concept. We, about 5 years ago, figured out that we were sitting inside of a traditional data center company, and one of our founders saw a environment in Las Vegas where folks were sending in their Mac Minis, which are the Mac server, to a data center to be hosted. The benefit of being in a data center is you've got constant power, you've got constant network, you've got sort of reliable access to that resource. And so he had over 1,000 minis that people over the years had sent into him. So I came back to Atlanta and said, that's probably not a bad idea. Why don't we try that? And so we built some software and basically developed a competing offering, and spun up the website and figured out that very, very quickly that nobody came because that guy already had a lock on the marketplace. And so we said, well, what can we do a little bit differently? And what can we do differently is, again, you go back to the data center world where typically operators will buy servers and rent them out to customers. So we borrowed $250,000 and went out and bought several hundred Mac Minis and started to rent them. And we thought initially the market was going to be, small hobbyists and, the photographer that wants to put his photographs of the wedding on a hosted site so that his clients could basically download them reliably. And so we were going along for a couple of months, and all of a sudden a large company showed up at the door and said, gosh, I didn't know you hosted Macs. I'd like to get 25 of them. We said, oh, great, okay. They said, well, wait a minute, this is working so well, I'd like to get 100. And then they said, I'd like to get 500. And we said, holy moly, this is something's going on here. And so it turns out you can't get any Mac-hosted servers anywhere in the world because Apple discontinued the one data center version of the Apple server called the Xserve in 2010. And so all you're left with is the Mac Mini and the Mac Pro. So what we did was took that as a challenge and tried to figure out how we could fill that void. So we designed some proprietary rack infrastructure. We added some additional computing horsepower and redundant network and external storage arrays to basically turn a bunch of Mac Minis and Mac Pros into an enterprise class server environment. And it took off. And so from 2012, we had our first revenue in May of 2012. Through 2015, we had a 5,000% revenue growth over that period. Ended up at number 44 on the Inc. 500 and number 20 on the Technology Fast 500 for Deloitte. So we've had just a tremendous amount of growth over the past couple of years, serving not only these smaller hobbyists, as we call them, but these large enterprise clients that can't scale internal Mac environments fast enough or reliably enough, and so they outsource to us. And so we have become the largest Mac hosting company on the planet. Now that doesn't mean that we're super large compared to Rackspace and all these other companies, because we're just doing Apple. And what sort of fills in the gap for why Apple's important is because thousands of companies are moving to a mobile-enabled business. Banks are going mobile-enabled. Everybody's going mobile-enabled. Well, if you're going to do iOS mobile app development, in order to really do that effectively, you need to use Apple's proprietary software called OS X, or now it's called Mac OS. And that only runs on Apple hardware. And so you need to have Apple hardware spun up to run this. And that's the void we fill.
Sure. Well, and of course, Apple adoption in business, that's no longer an issue, right? So you're not getting ad and media type firms, you're getting a mix of all kinds.
That's correct. We're getting a lot of software companies that are doing mobile app development, or they're a tools company, software tools company that basically provide mobile app development platforms on a SaaS basis. Companies like Litmus and BuddyBuild and BuildKite and Unity and Splunk and Salesforce and Box, they're all using our environment so that they don't have to scale a Mac Mini or Mac Pro environment internally. So from a competitive standpoint, we don't really have any competitors except the companies themselves. And once they make the decision to outsource that Mac infrastructure to us, they don't go back because because we do it so efficiently. We can scale efficiently, and that is the principal reason why people use this. So, just to sort of back up a little bit, we have taken these two Apple consumer desktop products, the Mac Mini and the Mac Pro, and by basically developing patented rack infrastructure, we've turned them into enterprise class assets. And so, a traditional data center server rack holds 44 servers. This particular rack we have with Mac Minis holds 460 servers. So it's a very efficient, energy efficient, optimized infrastructure for us to deploy this Mac Mini or this Mac Pro. So we've got lots of large customers that have basically moved all of their Mac computing resource requirements to MacStadium.
Sure.
And so the other part of that is, since these companies, these software companies, are accessing our servers from all over the world, latency or speed becomes a problem. And so if you're connecting from Shanghai to Atlanta, it's about a 350 millisecond connect time. Well, that's pretty slow when you're doing automated routines. So that then said that we need to be closer to where those customers are. So to that end, we actually built a data center out in Las Vegas. We also built a data center in Dublin, Ireland. And we have plans, or actually we're in the middle of plans to build a data center in Singapore. And by moving those resources closer to where our customers are, which are all over the globe, they get a faster response time. And so we should be in Singapore by the end of the year.
Great. Well, what kind of triggered us was we just happened to see that you had a capital raise. Is that primarily where you plan on using those resources?
Yeah. So interestingly, we've been cash flow positive since early 2014. It's a very efficient CapEx model. And I needed a little bit of extra dry powder to expand marketing and to go to Ireland. And so in late 2014, I raised $1 million of equity from angels. And that's the only equity that I had raised in the company thus far. Well, in late 2016, it became clear that I wanted to go faster and that the angels had, we were exceeding the limit of the check they could write. And so we went to market to find a larger financial sponsor that could, A, take out the angel investors, and B, put in some additional equity for us to grow faster. And that's exactly what we did. And
sure.
So in actually second week of May this year, we closed on a new investment from Summit Partners out of Boston, which is a $7.5 billion growth equity fund. Mm-hmm. And partnering with them in that raise was Nora Mosley Partners, who is a well experienced long-term venture fund here in Atlanta. Ironically, I was CEO of a company headquartered here back 10 years ago called Cypress Communications, that I actually bought Cypress from the public market and actually Nora Mosley was my largest investor at the time. So Mike Elliott, the managing partner of Nora, who was on my board at Cypress 10 years ago, is now on my board again at MacStadium. So, so that's pretty neat.
Well, now we have to give full disclosure because this is a first for TechCXO. You are a TechCXO alumnus.
Exactly. So actually, after I had sold Cypress back in 2005 to our Capita private equity fund, I actually joined TechCXO at the behest of Neil Miller, who was also with me at Cypress. And I think I was partner number 9 at the time. So at the time, this is 2007 or 6. My specialty was working with startups, trying to take good ideas and sort of rationalize them into business models, and to basically produce 5-year financial models to then go and get funding from angel investors and so forth. I had a number of clients that we were successful in doing that while I was at TechCXO, the predecessor of TechCXO. and actually ended up in 2009 assuming the CEO role of one of those portfolio companies that I was working with. So that's how I left TechCXO. I actually took out one of my clients. So so it's interesting sort of small world. And so I've been able to utilize the services, now the many services of TechCXO, both on marketing and on basic financials and modeling and so forth, to help support some of these projects, to support the equity raise and also to support some marketing early on. So I've been very pleased with all of the expanded services now that TechCXO has nationwide to take advantage of.
Well, that's the best kind of endorsement, when you work in a restaurant and then go eat there afterwards.
That is an excellent analogy. I like that.
Well, what would you, it doesn't just have to relate to TechCXO, but
sure.
In terms of getting resources quickly that you can rely on and expertise in the door, I mean, clearly you're bought into the model, but what would you tell someone who faced kind of similar challenges and that speedy ramp up that you did?
I mean, really, as a direct result of my involvement with TechCXO, I've become a uber believer in the outsource model. I outsource HR, I outsource cap table management, I outsource extra software development, I outsource marketing, all because of the experience and success that I experienced both as a partner at TechCXO, but also as a client of TechCXO as well. And I think any company, large or small, today that is trying to ramp up resources, the sort of the quickest way to market, so to speak, is to use a virtual or an on-demand resource, which TechCXO has a wide pool of talent to be able to handle that. If you think of it in technology terms, it's moving to the cloud.
Sure.
Everybody's moving from this tangible internal infrastructure to the cloud, where things are more variable, you can scale faster, you can scale up, scale down as your business dictates. And I think that's the model that any company, technology or otherwise, should be deploying these days.
Well, Greg, we couldn't appreciate more that type of very close endorsement. You've lived it. I don't want to give your deck short shrift here. What else should we focus on?
Well, the key thing is, and this is really where our business has really taken off as of late. Again, we've got over 2,000 customers worldwide, where we have 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 minis that we are actually renting to them in a cluster. But what really happened was large companies are trying to build virtual instances of Mac. And so we partner with VMware, which is the largest commercial, enterprise class virtualization engine, to run that on top of our Mac infrastructure. And in so doing, we're building private clouds for companies to use for all of their Mac needs, whether it's a development resource pool or, in fact, whether it's a university or a general business that wants virtual desktop instances of Mac. Yeah. So, for instance, using a VDI software, virtual desktop integration software, an individual can have a Chromebook or a Windows Surface and still get access to a Mac desktop over that. And so that's one of the new product offerings that we are offering now, using a virtual VDI software platform.
It's a tremendous model. I mean, it's great how you build that space.
Yeah, so just a couple, and we've got a couple of case studies that we've done in terms of Uber and Unity. Unity is the largest gaming engine company on the planet. They're the engine behind most game development these days. They're the engine behind Pokemon Go. Uber, for instance, Uber is probably the best example of a mobile app company. That's kind of what they do. They upgrade their software once a week for users. And so what the Uber contacts have told us publicly in some conferences is they do all of their Android development at Amazon, which is a very large environment, and they do all of their iOS development at MacStadium. And from Uber's perspective, they're equal. And so that was a great sort of testimonial that what we're building and the area that we're working on really works. So other customers that have built private environments for their Mac at MacStadium are Box. There's a couple of Microsoft individual projects, a couple of Google individual projects, some e-commerce companies like Shopify, Thumbtack, Shopkeep, other media companies like Rabbit, and King, which makes Candy Crush the game.
Sure.
Pandora. So it's a wide range of different customers. Now, again, we don't have the lion's share of their business. That's not our model. We have their Mac business, and that is our model. And so that's where we really stay very focused on Mac and, try not to go too far outside those lanes.
Well, congratulations on all your success and growth. We're happy that we played some small role in that. And
continue to.
Yeah, well, great. And we look forward to more great things from MacStadium. So, Greg McGraw from MacStadium, thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Bill.